We're recording. This text tonight is not only understandable, but it also has connections all over the place. It's called the Acts of Kefa and the 12 Apostles. Somehow I missed this in the past, but I find the connections go to Gnosticism, to Kabbalah, I had this all memorized and then I forgot, to the Bhagavad Gita. I believe that is a Buddhist text, to Psalm 107, and I know I'm not going to have time to get all this stuff in, but I'll do my hour, and this is a very interesting text anyway. It also appeals to us who are on a road, say, to perfection or to, well, that point in destiny out there someplace that we've been looking for all our lives but haven't quite achieved yet. A little about this text is it comes from the New Testament Apocrypha. I'm going to check out here and see who's got their mics on. Oh, it's always Norman. Norman, you're always wanting to get some attention.
Sorry about that.
Hey, I got your calendars today.
Oh, good.
I haven't got into them yet, but I'm excited.
That's good. Okay. I have a question before you continue.
Okay.
Quick question. Why can I not access Professor Smith's teachings?
You need to know where to get them.
Well, I went to your site, Jackson Snyder Presents, and when I click on that first lesson, it says, can't find that page. Email.
Yes, I know. I took them off of there. I put them someplace else.
Well, can you email to let me know? Because I'm afraid I need to review.
Oh, me too. I got to catch up the whole thing. Can I put it on the chat here?
Okay, good.
Here it comes. It's www.jacksonsnyder.com/earth/lessons/index.htm. I know that's long. But if you go out there, there's a shorter one. Here it is. That's www.esseneacademy.com. And you go and click on lesson 17 or course 17. And that'll take you out to links to the, look at that first one. I spelled my own name wrong. It'll take you out to links to those 3 videos that have been done so far, and also the several videos that we did at Sukkot, which will be like sample or review videos. Remember on those that I did those with a hand camera and that we were always having trouble with power. And so I actually burned out 2 cameras while I was over there at Sukkot trying to get as much as I could of Professor Smith as possible. But now that we got the class going, I mean, he's been doing an excellent job. And I don't think it's too late for you to join in if you'd like to. It's called Prayer Book Hebrew, the Easy Way. I found that he's an excellent teacher. I was so glad I was able to snag him. Again, back to the Acts of Kefa and the 12 Apostles, the apocryphal text. I will just read it through, and then I'll come back to a couple places as time permits and try to show you these connections that I found with other texts, especially the Bhagavad Gita. This is found in the Nag Hammadi library. The text contains two parts. There's an initial allegory and a subsequent exposition of the meaning of the allegory. It's not too Gnostic, I've got to say, but it's helpful. At least it was helpful for me. People that are on the way but are going through persecutions and troubles, and we should be going through troubles. You know, if we're not bothering the devil, then what does he have in bothering us? But if we are, we're going to have troubles. It's a test. We're in the middle of a living test. This allegory in the story is thought to have been originally a work in its own right without the interpretation. And they date it in that form to perhaps the 2nd century. Honestly, this text, seeing it how it was in the Nag Hammadi library, could be very, very early. They can only date based on paleography and radioactive radiocarbon. However, they can only get within a couple hundred years usually. There's just no telling. And of course, if we were to do radiocarbon dating on King James Version today, we wouldn't get 1611. We would get to whenever the actual paper was derived or put together, and that would still be within 100 or 50 years. So we just don't know about these texts. It seems to me that one of the texts in there, the Gospel of Thomas, is extremely early, probably predating regular canonical Gospels, just because of the way it's written, that the parables in there that parallel the Gospel parables are much simpler. And one rule of thumb is if you're comparing two texts, you want to know which is earlier, it's the simpler one that is earlier, supposedly. We take, for instance, Mark, Matthew, and Luke. The simplest one is Mark. Matthew uses Luke. Matthew uses Mark. Luke uses Mark and add their own material to it. So we find that Mark, in that particular hypothesis, is the earliest of the texts. The allegory describes the tale similar to the parable of the pearl in the Gospel of Matthew, of a pearl merchant who's selling a pearl at a great price. The merchant is shunned by the rich, but the poor attend in droves and learn that the pearl is kept at the home city of the merchant, which is later revealed as a place called 9 Gates. That this merchant doesn't carry the pearl on him, but rather he keeps it in safekeeping in his home city. It's the 9 Gates, for one term, that is so relevant to other, not only sects of Christianity, but also religions. As such, those who desire that pearl must trek the arduous journey to 9 Gates. And so let me start on the text here. I'm going to say this is probably going to take a half hour to read, but it's nice. I want you to try, as I'm reading it, to use it as, what do they call it? A mental exercise, to try to see what I'm reading in your mind, because it really deserves and needs that kind of imagery so we can understand it better and keep track of what it's saying. And I, Kefa, inquired about the name of this city from residents who were standing on the dock. A man among them answered, saying, "The name of this city is Habitation," that is, foundation, yasod, a rock of endurance. And the leader among them, holding the palm branch at the edge of the dock. And after we had gone ashore with the baggage, I went into the city to seek advice about lodging. City of habitation comes from Psalm 107:7, King James Version only. Talks about just a similar journey here on the road to a city called habitation, but the later translators say a city worthy of habitation. But of course, you know how the Hebrew is now that we got some Hebrew scholars on here. It's quite vague in the Psalm 107 text. And as far as I could read it, it just said city habitation. And a man came out wearing a cloth bound around his waist, with a gold belt girded around it. Also, a shroud was tied over his chest, extending over his shoulders and covering his head and his hands. The translator of this text uses napkin there instead of shroud. But I looked it up and I thought shroud was much more appropriate as a synonym. A shroud tied over his chest, extending over his shoulders, covering his head and his hands. I was staring at the man because he was beautiful in his form and stature. There were 4 parts of his body that I saw: the soles of his feet, and a part of his chest, and the palms of his hands, and his visage. These things I was able to see. A book cover like those of my books was in his left hand. A staff of styrax wood was in his right hand. His voice was resounding as he spoke slowly, crying out in the city, "Pearls, pearls." Styrax wood. Styrax is also called storax. Here in our country, we call it japonica. I went to Callaway Gardens up in Georgia many times, and I noticed they have a huge collection of different japonicas. And as I read more about this styrax japonica, it was used to make resins, but also as an unguent in perfumes and in tinctures. I don't know if we still have a styrax extract or oil today, but I'd like to find out. And of course, the wood of the styrax would be fragrant, but also the sap of the styrax would be something that might actually be used in a burial unguent or oil, preservative oil. And maybe we need not make so much out of this wooden staff. But I don't think that the writer here would have used a term like this, styrax, unless it had some kind of significance. And obviously, that's the significance right there. Pearls, pearls. Indeed, I thought he was a man of that city, and I said to him, "My brother and my friend." He answered me then, saying, "Rightly did you say, my brother and my friend. What is it you seek from me?" I, that is Kefa, said to him, "I ask you about lodging for me and the brothers also, because we are strangers here." He said to me, For this reason have I myself just said, my brother and my friend, because I also am a fellow stranger like you. We get the idea that there's a pearl salesman walking by the docks, assuming that he has pearls on his person that he would be selling. Seems like a pretty poor place to sell pearls, but we'll see. And having said these things, he cried out, "Pearls, pearls!" The rich men of that city heard his voice. They came out of their hidden stores. And some were looking out from the stores of their houses. Others looked out from their upper windows. And they didn't see that they could get anything from him because there was no pouch on his back, nor bundle inside his cloth and napkin or shroud. It's one place I missed. And because of their disdain, they didn't even acknowledge him, the rich. He, for his part, didn't reveal himself to them. So they returned to their stores saying, "This man is mocking us." And the poor of the city heard his voice. And they came to the man who sells this pearl. They said, "Please take the trouble to show us the pearl so that we may then see it with our eyes. For we are poor, and we don't have this kind of price to pay for it. But show us, so we might tell our friends that we saw a pearl with our own eyes." He answered, saying to them, "If it's possible, come to my city, so that I may not only show it before your eyes, but give it to you for nothing in exchange." And indeed, they, the poor of the city, heard all this and said, "Since we are beggars, we surely know that a man doesn't give a pearl to a beggar. But bread and money is usually received. Now then, the kindness that we want to receive from you is for you to show us the pearl before our eyes. And we will say to our friends proudly that we saw a pearl before our eyes, because such is not found among the poor, especially such beggars as us." He answered, saying to them, "If it's possible, you yourself come to my city, so that I may not only show you it, but give it to you for nothing in exchange." The poor and the beggars rejoice because of the man who gives for nothing in return. The men asked Kefa about all the hardships. Kefa answered and told those things that he had heard about, all the hardships of the way. And they did so because they are interpreters of the hardships in their ministry. In other words, they're supposed to tell what they're going through on the way. Same word used in Acts and many other places. Many of the apocryphal New Testament writings concerning our walk, the way of righteousness or the road of righteousness, way and road, same thing. Odos in Greek, and in Hebrew, derek. He said to the man who sells this pearl, "I want to know your name and the hardships of the way to your city, because we're strangers and servants of Elohim. It's necessary for us to spread the word of Elohim. As for the hardships of the way to the city, which you asked me about, I will tell you about it. No one is able to go on that way except one who has forsaken everything that he has, and has fasted daily from stage to stage. For many are the robbers and wild beasts on the way. The one who carries bread with him on the way The black dogs kill because of the bread. The one who carries an expensive garment of the world with him, the robbers kill because of the garment. The one who carries water with him, the wolves kill because of the water, since they were thirsty for it. The one who is anxious about meat and green vegetables, the lions eat because of the meat. If he evades the lions, the bulls devour him and eat the green vegetables. When he had said these things to me, I sighed within myself, saying, great hardships are on the way. If only Jesus would give us power to walk it. He looked at me since my face was sad, and I sighed. He said to me, why do you sigh if you indeed know this name, Jesus, and believe him? He is a great power for giving strength, for I too believe in the Father who sent him. I replied, asking him, what is the name of the place to which you go, your city? He said to me, this is the name of my city, 9 Gates. Let us praise Elohim as we are mindful that the 10th is the head. After this, I went away from him in peace. This 9 gates, that's what maps all over the place. It maps to the Buddhist literature. It maps to Kabbalah. It maps to Gnosticism. And I'll see what I can find here in my notes about it later on because it's significant. As I was about to go and call my friends, I saw waves and large high walls surrounding the bounds of the city. I marveled at the great things I saw. I saw an old man sitting there, and I asked him if the name of the city was really Habitation. Habitation, he spoke to me. You speak truly, for we inhabit here because we endure here. I responded saying, justly have men named it Habitation, because by everyone who endures his trials, cities are inhabited, and a precious kingdom comes from them, because they endure in the midst of the apostasies and the difficulties of the storms, so that in this way, the city of everyone who endures the burden of his yoke of faith will be inhabited, and he will be included in the reign of the skies. The city they're in is called Habitation. The city where the pearl monger wants them to go is called 9 Gates. I hurried and went, and I called my friends so that we might go to the city that he, Lethargoel, appointed for us. Lethargoel. It's derived from both Greek and Coptic. Litho means stone, and goel means something like blazing or shiny. It also has a Hebrew derivative, goel. We find it in Job chapter 19. I know that my goel liveth. Goel, it's usually translated redeemer, but the word actually means blood avenger. So I think that we have a double meaning here, or a name that's derived from 2 different sources. Lethargoel, Lithargoel. I think I have some more on that name that's important. I hurried and went and called my friends so that we might go to the city that he, Lethargoel, appointed for us. In the bond of faith, We forsook everything as he had said to do. We evaded the robbers because they didn't find their garments with us. We evaded the wolves because they didn't find the water with us for which they thirsted. We evaded the lions because they didn't find the desire for meat with us. We evaded the bulls for they didn't find green vegetables. A great joy came upon us and a peaceful carelessness like that of our master. We rested ourselves in front of the gate and we talked with each other about that which is not a distraction of this world. Rather, we continued in contemplation of the faith. As we discussed the robbers on the way, whom we evaded, behold, the Thargoel, having changed, came out to us. He had the appearance of a doctor, since an unguent box was under his arm. And a young disciple was following him, carrying a pouch full of medicine. We didn't recognize him. Kefa responded and said to him, "We want you to do us a favor because we're strangers and take us to the house of Lethargoel before evening comes." He said, "In uprightness of heart, I will show it to you. But I am amazed at how you knew this good man, for he doesn't reveal himself to everyone, because he himself is the son of a great king. Rest yourselves a little, so that I may go and heal this man and then come back." He hurried, and he came back quickly. He said to Kefa, "Kefa!" And Kefa was frightened, for how did he know that his name was Kefa? Kefa responded to the Savior, "Now we have an identity. How do you know me? For you called my name." Lethargoel answered, "I want to ask you who gave the name Kefa to you." He said to him, "It was Jesus, the Christos, the Son of the living Elohim. He gave this name to me." He answered and said, "It is I. Recognize me, Kefa." He loosened the garment which clothed him, the one into which he had changed himself because of us, revealing to us in truth that it was he. We bowed ourselves on the ground and paid homage to him. We comprised 11 disciples. He stretched forth his hand and caused us to stand. We spoke with him humbly. Our heads were bowed down in unworthiness as we said, "What you wish, we'll do. But give us power to do what you wish at all times." So he gave them the unguent box and the pouch that was in the hand of the young disciple. He commanded them like this, saying, "Go into the city from which you came, which is called Habitation. Continue in endurance as you teach all those who have believed in my name, because I have endured the hardships of the faith. I will give you your reward. To the poor of that city, give what they need in order to live until I give them what is better, which I told you that I will give you for nothing in return." Kefa answered and said to him, "Master, you have taught us to forsake the world and everything in it. We've renounced them for your sake. What we are concerned about now is getting food for a single day. Where will we be able to find the needs that you ask us to provide for the poor?" Oh, that's a question we ask all the time around here. Where will we be able to find the needs that you ask us to provide for the poor? The master answered and said, "O Kefa, it was necessary that you understand the parable that I told you. You don't understand that my name, which you teach surpasses all riches, and the wisdom of Elohim surpasses gold and silver and precious stone. He gave them the pouch of medicine and said, heal all the sick of the city who believe in my name. Kefa was afraid to reply to him for the second time. He signaled to the one who was beside him, who was John. You talk this time. John answered and said, Master, before you we are afraid to say many words, but it's you who asked us to practice this skill. We've not been taught to be physicians. How then will we know how to heal bodies as you told us? He answered them, rightly have you spoken, John, for I know that the doctors of this world heal what belongs to the world. The doctors of souls, however, heal the heart. Heal the bodies first, therefore, so that through the real powers of healing for their bodies, without medicine of the world, they may believe in you, that you have power to heal the illnesses of the heart also. The rich men of the city, however, those who didn't see fit even to acknowledge me, but who reveled in their wealth and pride, with such as these, therefore, don't dine in their houses nor be friends with them, lest their partiality influence you. For many in the assemblies have shown partiality to the rich, because they also are sinful, and they give occasion for others to sin. But judge them with uprightness, so that your ministry may be spoken well of, and that my name also may be spoken well of in the assemblies. The disciples answered and said, yes, truly, this is what is fitting to do. They bowed themselves on the ground and paid obeisance to him. He caused them to stand and departed from them in peace. And thus ends the reading of the Acts of Kefa and the 12. Well, I was in a little bit of a impasse in going through this, because I like to be as correct as possible before I pass these texts on to other people. I made some errors there, but I'm always wondering, and especially in a text like this that was written in Coptic, that is Egyptian language, an Egyptian language at that time that contained letters very similar to the Greek language. They call it Sahidic. As far as the word God, I'm thinking, if I work with a Latin text, should I use Deus? Or a Greek text, do I use Theus? A Sahidic text, I looked that up too. Let me see, Nute. Nute would be generic for God. And I tried to learn a little bit about the Coptic language here. There are several really, really good pages up. Actually, one page you can learn the Coptic if you'd like to, because there's so many texts now that we find that we can read if we could read the Coptic. There's such a carryover in Greek, so many Greek loan words in there. Let me see. There's an answer key in the back of Prayer Book Hebrew. Oh, I don't have the book, so I have to rely on what's coming up on the videos. There certainly is a parallel with Pilgrim's Progress. Pilgrim's Progress is probably one of the finest pieces of allegory ever written. And when I was going through hard times in my 30s, I listened to Sir John Gielgud read The Pilgrim's Progress in a shortened version over and over and over again. It gave me such strength. Hearing about Pilgrim going through the Slough of Despond and falling down into the cave and all these different places, and then having companions coming up, faithful and false companions, and people jumping over the walls to get on the right course. Always scriptural notations that came with that. There's a second part of Pilgrim's Progress. It's very beautiful. It's called Christiana's Progress. That's where, remember, he left his wife. Pilgrim left his wife because her and the children were so caught up in the world. And they wouldn't even let him practice his religion. So one day, in order to get on that path, he just left them all behind after begging his wife to go Christiana. When Pilgrim gets to the celestial city in the first part, in the second part, he comes back to get Christiana and the children. And it used to be so touching to me. After he went through all this hardship, he knew the way to the celestial city. And thus he was able to lead his family there. You want a link to what I just read? If you want to find out the pages for Coptic, just go to Learn Coptic in your search engine. There'll be several different pages come up. You have to be a little bit careful because Coptic has a different alphabet. I think it has 4 or 5 more letters than the Greek alphabet. But there are so many texts to read. I would sure love to learn it. And it looks fairly easy. I've got some of the pages right here concerning this text I just read. But as far as getting the text yourself, yes, you can get it at, go to Variahot, click on Docs, and you'll find it at the end of the page there. I'm going to start putting all this information up as premium material. And somebody suggested to me after going through my old website there, jacksonsnyder.org, excuse me, that there was so much good stuff in there and so much stuff, period, that ought to be premium content. It ought to be cleaned up because there are all kinds of text translations I've done on there and paraphrases, all kinds of stuff out there. Sometimes I'm amazed to just see. I remember I wanted so much to learn hyperlinking in the 90s that I thought this would be a perfect way to keep what I have together and find it for myself. So I had no intention of putting it up for other people. I wanted to learn hyperlinking so I could make it available to me. Of course, I went on a quest to learn website construction. And I want you to know, if you're interested in doing that yourself, I'm starting a class on that in December. It's in the events on Facebook, where I'll give you free tools that you'll need, free software for what you'll need. And we'll start at the beginning. and we'll skip things that we don't need to know and go right to the practical things that will give you the skills in a very short time to put up your own websites, functional ones. Then you could go on from there to learn more, but we'll do that. Go check on events and sign up for that class. I'll probably charge for it because that's going to take me a lot, but it will certainly be worth it. However, I'm not going to charge anybody who will use their skills to help me in the ministry of the Ahad, because this is what I do a lot of, website construction, and my intention is not to be fancy. My intention is simply to be functional. And I'm so glad that there are a couple people that are checking my links here, and the Essene Academy. I've been working on that for the last 6 months, maybe, trying to get that all good. Somebody's checking my links to know that they're still working and so forth. But I could use 3 people doing that and working to put things up for me, and I will teach you how to do it. If you can use a word processor, you can do web processing, because we have an editor that's what you see is what you get. You'll see that coming up in the events section of the Very Ahad Think Tank in December. And I'm also going to put it out there on Earth Academy or esseneacademy.com. I'll put that in as another course. And I just thought, I need help on this, and why don't I just teach somebody to do it? It's not hard if you've got the right tools. Now let's go back to the 9 gates. And I have a reading from the Bhagavad Gita, if I haven't lost it, that talks in terms that are, oh, look at that. Talks in terms that are extremely similar to the 9 gate. Here it is. To the 9 gate notation in this particular text, same context. This is from the Bhagavad Gita 5:13. Now, this text dates to about 300 to 400 BC. It is the dialogues between Krishna, who's driving a chariot, and the guy he drives for, a holy man of some kind. I have really no experience in this text at all, but I do happen to have one. And so I went into that. And let's look at the 9 gates. Gate 9. From the Bhagavad Gita 5:13, when the embodied living being controls his nature and mentally renounces all actions, he resides happily in the city of 9 gates. That means the material body, neither working nor causing work to be done. This is the nothingness spoken of in Buddhism. The embodied soul lives in the city of 9 gates. The activities of the body, or the figurative city of the body, are conducted automatically by its particular modes of nature. The soul, although subjecting himself to the conditions of the body, can be beyond those conditions if he so desires. Owing only to forgetfulness of his superior nature, he identifies with the material body and therefore suffers. This is a very good teaching. Therefore, when one takes to Krishna consciousness, one at once becomes completely aloof from bodily activities. In such a controlled life, in which his deliberations are changed, he lives happily within the city of 9 gates, happily within his own body, in his own circumstances. The 9 gates are mentioned as follows. Navadvare pure dehi, hamsoliriate bahi, vasi sarvaya lokasya, and savarasi karazya ka. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is living within the body of a living entity, is the controller of all living entities all over the universe. The body consists of 9 gates, 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, 2 ears, 1 mouth, the anus, and the genitals. The living entity in his conditioned stage identifies himself with the body, but when he identifies himself with the Lord, I think they're talking about Krishna there, within himself, he becomes just as free as the Lord, even while in the body. Therefore, a Krishna conscious person is free from both the outer and inner activities of the material body. If one performs actions without attachment, as previously stated, he is the real sannyasi. If one performs actions with the external body but renounces in the mind, one resides happily, controlling the senses, or vasi. Where? In the city of 9 gates, in the body devoid of the misconception of this is me. The dweller in the body, the jiva, having attained knowledge, does nothing at all, knowing that he is not the cause of happiness through his actions, and that he is not the cause of others doing actions. Oh, let's see. There's a lot here in a commentary on this, but I want to do just a little more. This looks good. Commentary here by Sri Keshava Kashmiri of Kumara Sampradaya. Persons full of selfish desires, hankering for the rewards of their actions, are tightly bound to the material existence by the actions of their bodies and senses, impelled by the very desires they seek to gratify. While the aspirant for Atma Tattva, or realization of the soul, although also involved in activities of the physical body, realize they are undoubtedly different from the actions of the body and the senses. Such a person of controlled mind and sense organs is well aware that the ego and ideas of I-ness and my-ness revolve around the bodily conception. So they never ignorantly think that the physical body is who they really are, and hence understand that any doership is not of the nature of the Atma, or soul. So abandoning all fruitive and frivolous actions and residing contentedly in the city of 9 gates, known as the physical body, which also has no ego sense, possessed of 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 nostrils, 1 mouth, 1 generating organ and 1 organ for excretion, totaling 9, an embodied being is not bound to material existence by action. Well, that in itself explains 2 or 3 George Harrison songs. I, Me, Mine, for one. Oh, My Lord. One other one, he talks about letting the things of the flesh go. I don't know if we can do that or not. Let's see, Ellie has something here. Is this immaterial body dwelling in the heavenlies, from Buddhism, an essence type body that has or is already seated with Yeshua? Well, he talks about the soul. Of course, we understand from a Hebraic conception that the soul is equated with all one's being. People don't have souls, but they are living soul. And so if it's the same in that particular religion, I would think that if you master the soul, if you master the spirituality, then the body is going to come along with that. And of course, that the excerpt you talk about is in Ephesians, isn't it? Chapter 1. Ephesians. I've got a little spill here. Hold on a second. It's just condensation. Now, I asked Liz about this. Same thing. If I could have a Kabbalistic interpretation. And she did send me something, and I'll end up with this. But wasn't that a nice story? I didn't find much Gnosticism in there at all. I mean, only with one interpreting it as Gnostic could you say it was Gnostic. This is from Liz. Knowledge of the lowest 7 of the Sephirot is derived from King David's address to Elohim in 1 Chronicles 29:11. Yours, O El, are the greatness, that is the Gedulah, the power, Gevurah, and the glory, Tiferet, the victory, Netzach, and the splendor, Hod, for all that is in heaven and earth, Yasod. Yasod, I ask her, isn't Yasod mean the foundation? Of course it does. And here, that goes back to this story here in the Acts of Peter we just read. It talks about, before we're told that the city is habitation, it talks about the city as being the foundation. Yours, O Elohim, is the kingdom, the Malkut. 2 of the remaining 3 Sephirot, Chakmah and Bina, wisdom and understanding, are one of the most frequent pairings of attributes of Elohim found throughout the Hebrew Bible. The highest Sephirah, Ketar, or crown, signifies Elohim's rule and authority as King of Kings. And she gives me a note that she's checking out the book, The New Man, that I sent her. The Law of 7 is described by Gurdjieff as the first fundamental cosmic law. Oh, let me tell you about the Law of 7. I took a course in oceanography at Indiana University. Yeah, you've heard this before. This is pretty incredible. The oceanography teacher was a professional marine biologist and an atheist. She made that quite clear. She taught evolution all the time. And she talked about the Law of 7. She said, I can prove it to you right now if you get near an ocean. And so I remember this, and I moved down here near an ocean. And I observe about every time I go. I stand there and watch the waves. She said the 7th wave is always the largest of the set. She said sometimes it's the 6th, sometimes at the 8th, but it always averages out to the 7th wave. I have watched the waves many times thinking of this. Every time I go there, I look at them and I count. Sometimes I'll count to 7 sevens or even more than that and find that that's true. And she, just like Gurdjieff, speaks about it as being a cosmic law. It's got to be, it's got to be something if the ocean obeys it. The law is used to explain processes. The basic use of the law of seven is to explain why nothing in nature and in life constantly occurs in a straight line. That is to say that there are always ups and downs in life which occur lawfully. Examples of this can be noticed in athletic performances, where a high-ranked athlete always has a periodic downfall, as well as in nearly all graphs that plot topics that occur over time, such as the economic graphs, population graphs, death rate graphs, and so on. All show parabolic periods that keep rising and falling. Gurdjieff claimed that since these periods occur lawfully based on the law of seven, that it is possible to keep a process in a straight line if the necessary shocks were introduced at the right time. A piano keyboard is an example of the law of seven, as the seven notes of the major scale correspond exactly to it. That's another thing I thought about many times. Why these notes? Why can't you hear that quarter step, that eighth step? And you're thinking about the Fibonacci sequence. Well, that's another story. I was in a money-making scheme that used the Fibonacci sequence to make money, and by golly, that would have made money. I was pushed into it by a parishioner. But the government shut it down way soon. The foundation of it was sound, and it went along with this law of sevens thing. The government must have known it would work, and it wasn't creating money out of nothing. There was a product that was being sold. Then she goes on to say that the law of three is described by Gurdjieff as the second fundamental cosmic law. This law states that every whole phenomenon is composed of three separate sources, which are active, male, passive, female, and reconciling or neutral, which is called the middle pillar, Yahweh. This law applies to everything in the universe and humanity, as well as all the structures and processes. The three centers in a human, which Gurdjieff said were the intellectual center, the emotional center, and the moving center, are expressions of the law of three. And there's more here, but that's enough on Kabbalah. So I think that we make legitimate connections here with this text, and it's probably quite overlooked. Like I said, I have it in books here, but I never looked at it before. She teaches that the three centers are the Morning Star administration. Is that all there? Lee and I were talking about this here lately, about the name Lucifer, what it stood for. Of course, it's Latin. It's talking about the morning star. The three centers relating to the Enneagram, I don't know that there are three centers. I would have to know more about that. But I know the Enneagram works. Oh, thank you, Norman. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Professor Smith does a great job. You have access today because I sent you a link. Here's a link right here. Now you can't, I'm sorry, I'm off course here, but we're done. You can't access these videos on YouTube because they're private. And so here's where you can find them. You go to that link. Allison Harrison, maybe you should be teaching this. You could sure teach me something. Wow. I was illustrating the theory behind Enneagram as a bird with a body and 2 wings. Some of us has broken wings. 3 motivations, maybe. Well, haven't there been songs about that? Take these broken wings and learn to fly all your life. All right, so you go to essenacademy.com, click on course 17, Prayer Book Hebrew, and that will take you to a page that will have links on it. And like you, I'm really just starting out on this. I have to get caught up with it. I really want to learn it too. And I would like to put on a course on the low road to Greek. I tried to do this once before, as Marcio remembers, but I didn't have enough interest because I think the people had to learn the alphabet. That was too much work for them. And it just tapered off. By the 3rd lesson, nobody showed up at all. Well, you've got to learn the alphabet if you're going to try to learn a language. But you can take a low road to New Testament or Koine Greek that will get you there in a very short time. And this Coptic thing, I would love to do that too. And Russian. It's just not stick-to-itive enough. But I thought, it would be, if I got arrested and had to go to jail, that'd be the perfect time. I don't think I minded that much. I really enjoyed every meal that I had when I was in jail before. You got a great big hot pepper, this big. You could trade it for desserts. The Spanish guys there, man, they made some kind of hooch out of that. They go round up your peppers every day and trade you their dessert for a pepper. They'd be hooping and hollering all night. I'll have to take this off of here. But thank you for coming. And Norman, I'll let the ones that need to know.